Are we at 11?
11:01.
11:01. Okay, I'm starting then. People are gonna just have to come in late. Well, what were you gonna say? Or before
I talked to Terry yesterday. He said he was gonna try to make it, but I don't know if he talked.
Oh, good. Yeah, we have, I think, about 10 more people, but
Michelle, if you don't know your license number, I can.
we were teasing about realtors earlier. It's like, hey, it starts at 11. They leave at 11 to come. Tucker's been here for like 2 hours. He's like, he's on time. Okay, we're gonna get started, guys. Good to see you guys on Zoom. Ashley is monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions or you want to like interject, do that, because I don't have you on speaker here just because of the way I have the camera set up. And then Tucker's gonna kind of like let you guys, for you guys that are in Utah, sorry Stacy, I don't see everybody on there, but CE credit for in Utah. And we were just talking, Tawny was saying that she's here because she wants to invest in more real estate and increase her portfolio. I love this topic, is it helps us with our clients too on what they should be looking at. Whenever you have a niche product to look at or a niche situation, it's better than looking for a transaction, looking for a listing, looking for a client. But who's your avatar? Who are you looking for? And with my investing background, I love the distressed properties, because what does that do? Somebody has a problem that you can help solve, right? So I'm gonna have Tucker come up here and introduce himself. He's with Backman Title Service, and we're gonna just rip right into it. So thanks for joining us, guys. And did you unmute you there?
I don't know.
On here? On the side. Let's
See, it's a good thing Jeff's here to get all the technical
Yep.
difficulties. There we go.
Did it go?
Let's see here.
There it goes. There it goes. Oh, we got you. We got you. I'll leave this one.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, what about now? Can you hear? There you go.
Oh, hey, there we got it. Thank you. Well, everybody, we'll talk about foreclosure. We'll look at these different ways. First off, we're going to look at these kind of three areas of foreclosure, or three ways that people lose property. So we've got tax sales, that's on the county level. We'll take a brief look at judicial foreclosure. That's mostly for judgments and liens. Used to be for HOA liens, now it's even more things. And then we'll look at the most common type, which is the trustee sale. So as we go through tax sale, I want to go through this quickly because it's not really the best way to invest in real property. I can remember being a kid watching Carlton Sheets on late night TV. If you remember that, picking up properties for pennies on the dollar. In other states, that's technically a thing. In Utah, a property tax sale doesn't wipe out inferior liens. It just doesn't. So generally, when something goes to property tax sale, it's that the owners of the property have not paid the property taxes for at least 5 years. And the county, in an effort to get paid the taxes, they'll have an auction. And typically what you bid at the auction is not the full price of the property. And typically you're not getting the full property anyway. The county tends to cordon off portions of parcels to get bids, to generate bids so that they get the property taxes, because they're really not interested in having someone lose their entire property. It's just the taxes. So most of the time when you're looking at property taxes sales, it's a waste of time for a real estate agent. Now, if you've got a property next to you or a property that you really are interested in, something specifically you're keeping your eyes on, then maybe that's a way that you can look at it, because you can purchase property that way. From an investment standpoint, though, generally looking at pre-foreclosure and foreclosure properties is a better way to go. So again, if you don't pay your property taxes for 5 years, you're going to have late fees and things accruing. In Utah, taxes are due every year, November 30th. The taxes actually start accruing on January 1st. And the fun part is they don't even tell you what the amount is until like August or September, right? If you don't pay your taxes by November 30th, they start accruing interest. And it used to be the interest was set by statute. Now they've got it tied to one of these economic indicators between 7 and 10%. So it varies year to year how much interest the county can take from you. So here's a little bit of a timeline. This is on your handouts again about how things work. Okay, we've got it in a separate, for the visual learners like me, we've got it on an actual timeline, but these two slides are basically the same thing, right? Again, real property taxes delinquent for 4 years from the time of final tax payment. Okay, these parts in red really tell you what you need to know. Okay, it's recapturing value for the county. Okay, and as the bidding continues, the percentage of ownership will be bid down. So the very first bid might be for 100% of the property, but if there's more than one bid, slowly they start taking property away from the kind of the master parcel is what you can call it. So it's not the same thing as a trustee sale, it's different. So this is from the Weber County Assessor's website, Treasurer's website, excuse me. These are the things that they don't guarantee at the county. Okay, they don't guarantee that the IRS lien that might be there gets redeemed. The IRS may still have a claim. They don't say that there's not continuing litigation. They don't say it's habitable, or they don't give you any sort of guarantee. It's almost worse than a quitclaim deed, because you are going to inherit things from the past owner. They don't get set aside. So when you get a conveyance from the tax sale, what you get is a tax deed. I've got an example of one coming up here. The county doesn't represent anything. It's again, a quitclaim deed from the county. So here's an example of one. This guy, Sean, bought this property at tax sale from the county. And this one ended up being an entire subdivision lot. Now it seems like a pretty good deal. Let's see, actually, I don't know if Sean did any diligence on this before he bought it, but let's see exactly what he bought. So here it is. You got lot 940, plat K in this subdivision. And sure enough, if you go back in time, the property taxes were delinquent for like 5 years. There's the tax deed on the Utah County Recorder's Office, right? There it is. This is what he bought. You can kind of see that little section in red. That's the lot in the subdivision he purchased. So it kind of looks even worse. I flipped it so north is up a little bit. You can kind of see it over here. Notice what it says on there, lot 940, not buildable. If you look at it on the overhead map, I've got it outlined in red. It's kind of hard to see, but it's this little parcel right here. So I've got questions like who benefits from the ownership of this parcel? And the answer is probably just the properties that surround it. So if I'm Sean and I own this field, or I own this property, or I own this subdivision lot, it might make sense. For anybody else, there's really no access. If you look at it, this is a frontage road, right? You think to yourself, oh, I've got access through the frontage road. This is actually a state highway, okay, that runs through here. With a state highway, you can't have a cut for a driveway or vehicular access closer than 200 feet from the intersection. So you might have access in that you can walk to it, but do you have any vehicular access at all? No. So tax sales, they've gotten a little bit worse over the years. The latest thing that's kind of made them harder to invest in is this Supreme Court decision here in Utah called Jordan versus Jensen. And the Supreme Court said, hey, if the county doesn't give legal notice, actual notice to every property, every person who has an interest in the property, junior lien holders, all the people, okay, prior owners, trustees, then interest does not get wiped out at the tax sale. You're getting the property subject to all the other liens. It doesn't wipe liens out. So I think Carlton Sheets, a lot of his stuff was in South Dakota. Seems like anyway. I don't know. It's a late night fever dream now. It's been years since I watched Carlton Sheets. There, the tax sale does wipe out junior liens. In Utah, it does not. It doesn't. So again, unless you have a specific property in mind, I'm not sure I'm going to pour through the newspaper to look up every tax sale. It's time better spent elsewhere. So part of your handouts will have this sheet. It goes through everything that we just looked at, just a summary of the slides, okay? How the timeline works, how the conveyances work, and how that percentage of ownership of the property gets bid down. All right, so let's go through the foreclosure process. And when I say foreclosure process for the purposes of this class, we're talking about federal loans for residential. So FHA, VA, Freddie, Fannie, USDA type loans. We're not talking about commercial or SBA loans. They have a different set of rules when it comes to foreclosure. But for consumer lending, we're really talking about this, there we go, the CFPB. How many of you have heard of the CFPB before? Yeah, CFPB, they've been around a long time now. It's been over 10 years. After the financial crisis, there's an act, it was the Dodd-Frank Act that passed. The CFPB came into being. So when I first started in the industry, we would have FHA, who was completely siloed, their own little agency. And then you'd have VA, and then Freddie and Fannie, and everybody made their own rules. Now, if you've been doing this for a while and you've bought REO properties, you probably knew that buying a Freddie property was different from a Fannie property. And even still in lending, there's different loan types available for these different areas. And now we have things like Ellie Mae, who's involved in mortgage lending. In this 2010, 2011 bill, things changed. The CFPB became the master. They are in charge of all consumer lending to individuals anyway, including mortgages. So the CFPB, one of the first things that they did is they changed the foreclosure rules. So if you think about how foreclosure worked in 2008, 2009, did it vary at all from lender to lender, or maybe even from loan to loan? Yeah. I know people who missed one payment with Bank of America back in the day. Bank of America immediately filed a notice of default, started foreclosure, and the people were out of their house within 4 months. I know of another loan with Bank of America where the people didn't make a payment for 3 years, and Bank of America never initiated foreclosure. By the time the people got ready to sell, the market had rebounded enough that they actually made money. It wasn't a short sell even. And there's problems with this, and there's problems nationwide. There's problems in Utah, especially with the amount of homes that were being foreclosed. Now, we can get into the big short end of things about mortgage-backed securities and why the CFPB came back into being, but the bottom line is the government felt that consumers needed advocacy and they needed protection from banks, and we needed to have an even process for getting things foreclosed. So on the federal level for all of us, that's when things change. So these are now federal rules. So this is a rule for every type of residential thing. Sorry, Ashley. Yeah, we can do. It should be on the Google Drive link that I sent to you. It should be class 2 practical advice, something like that. That'd be great. So let's talk about foreclosure avoidance. From now on, if you have one of these federal loans, before you're 36 days behind, Now, keep in mind what that really means. Your payment's due on the 1st usually. It's late after the 15th. So beginning about day 51, they're supposed to try and call you on the phone and say, hey, bro, you didn't make your payment. Is everything okay? Do you need to talk to a HUD-approved housing counselor that will pay for it? Do you need some help paying your mortgage? Did you just forget? You know, did your automatic payment not go through because you lost your debit card, your bank gave you a new one, all these different reasons. And they can't file foreclosure within that time. Also, before you're 45 days delinquent, they have to actually give you a written notice with all these different things. They're sending certified mail, not just regular mail. They have to be able to prove that you've received the mail that has all these different things saying, okay, and here's one number that you can call at the bank about your delinquent mortgage, about the payments you're behind. And one team, one person, one email address that you can talk to. That's different than how things used to be. Okay, if you ever did a short sale before, when we get into this, we'll talk about it, but you would call the bank and talk to a different person every time. The CFPB says, one team member, one group that you call consistently as the home borrower. They can't start foreclosing on you until you're at least 120 days behind on your payments. This is also different. It used to be single payment default could initiate like filing notice of default even if you're 1 month behind. On federal mortgages, again, you've got to be at least 120 days behind. Not only that, the bank has to prove that they followed this 36 and 45-day rule.
What if they don't?
Then the CFPB can fine them. So we've seen these big fines before. A lot of banks have been fined lately. Wells Fargo is one that keeps getting fined, it seems, from the CFPB. Anybody know why Wells Fargo has been fined recently? They actually had... Yeah, there was a moratorium for Wells Fargo. They weren't allowed to grow. You guys hear about that? It was kind of a unique thing. They couldn't market, they couldn't open new branches. They weren't allowed to grow for a certain amount of time because they kept opening fake accounts for their people. Like they'd apply for a credit card, the account holder had no idea they'd applied for, things like that, because their bank employees were getting paid a commission on how many accounts they could open. Okay, the CFPB is now in charge of fining everybody. And we have these two laws in real estate, right? We're worried about the Truth in Lending Act on the lending side. And for us, in title and real estate, we're worried about RESPA. And it used to be every agency would interpret those rules on their own terms. So FHA would interpret RESPA one way, and the VA would do it another, and Freddie and family, and so forth and so on. The CFPB now says, no, this is how RESPA works. This is how Truth in Lending Act works. It's just different.
Didn't that used to be 90?
Used to be 90, now it's 120 minimum.
When was that changed?
2010, I think, is when this rule came in. Yep. Yep, 2000, might have been 2011. So the bottom line with the CFPB is they now require the banks to have personnel and systems to prove that they follow this timeline. Okay, when did they miss their payments? Did we call them before day 36? Did we send them mail before day 45? Okay, we can't start foreclosure until they're at least 120 days or 4 months behind.
So if they started late on their, like they sent out their notice 3 weeks late, does the time frame start at that point?
It's from the first time they start. So 120 days is the minimum time. It can be longer than that.
So that's how somebody can stay in their house for 6 months and not pay anything.
Well, should I teach you how to stay in for even longer? So here's the, okay, I'm telling you how to, like, don't make your payments. This sounds like a Carlton Cheats commercial. But here's how it works. It says the mortgage servicer may not begin foreclosure process while a borrower is being evaluated for a loss mitigation plan. So think about that for a second. You're 90 days delinquent. They've done the 35-day rule. They've done the 45-day rule. Suddenly the borrower calls and says, hey, you know, we'd like to do a workout. We'd like to have some sort of mortgage plan that maybe we can tack on these extra payments to the back end of our loan, do loan modification, something like that. The bank can't start their foreclosure until they've been evaluated for that plan. So even on day 30 or day 90, you could start, even on day 110, if you start a plan, that doesn't mean 10 days later they can start foreclosure. No, it's after evaluation. So if you're working with a borrower who can't make their plan, make their payments on time, if their evaluation for loss mitigation, a workout, a loan agreement, forbearance or something like that, they can't start foreclosure during that first 120 days anyway, till after they're done. So can you stretch this out longer?
Especially if you don't answer your phone.
Yeah, you probably can. You probably can. Now, is this pro bank or is it pro consumer? Yeah, it's the CFPB, not the BFPB, right? It's consumer financial protection, not protecting the banks. So here's our long timeline, right? Payments due, your payments late after the 15th, before 36 days. So for the visual learners like me, again, this is how it works. And it's a 120-day minimum unless the bank is late on their filings or their notices, or unless the borrower started a mitigation plan. It can be longer than that. The 120 days is minimum. Okay, after the CFPB came into place, our Utah law changed for residential mortgages as well. So this, you can kind of see how these things kind of dovetail together, where state law starts to look like federal law. And a lot of the bills that were passed in our last legislative session, and a lot of the rules about insurance and things like that for title and escrow, this last legislative session got changed to match RESPA, to match the federal law. So let's look at this for a second. Before notice of default, this is Utah law again, the lender must designate a single point of contact. The lender has to be able to tell the borrower or the trustor how much they need to bring in to cure the default. Now that seems like common sense. Shouldn't the bank be able to tell you how far behind you are on your payments? Mm-hmm. Common sense, right? Believe it or not, back in the day, during this whole foreclosure crisis, was the bank able to tell you how much you owed them during the default process? It would take months. It would take literally months sometimes just to say, I've got money. I've got family money. Can you just tell me how much it is to just bring things back current? Now the trustees are in charge of that, okay? They have to disclose the name, telephone number, email address, mailing address of the single point of contact for the mortgage beneficiary. That matches the CFPB rules, right? Your single point of contact. So again, single point of contact is talking to you about foreclosure mitigation options available at the federal level or specific programs within that bank, part of our state code. So here we go. Our Utah requirements pre-foreclosure, 120 days is right there, right? So this is kind of communication that goes, this is kind of on the lender level, what they're looking at. This is on the borrower, okay? So on the borrower side, if your client is behind on their payments, this is kind of what they're going to be looking at, okay? They're past day 15. Oh man, they're past 15 days, 4 to 5%, depending on the loan type. That's how much their penalty is going to be if they make their payment after the 15th. Okay, after 30 days, they can report things to credit bureaus, like they have not made their payment. Do they do that every time? It varies bank to bank, but the law is, or the rules are, they can start doing that. They can do that, right? At 45 days, again, they're assigning this to a specific department, a specific person to contact the borrower.
So if that doesn't happen, then none of the other timelines even start kicking in.
That's right, until that happens.
Day 100.
Yep. So the banks really have to have a whole system in place. And this was the problem when you went from a Chase mortgage to a Wells Fargo mortgage to a Bank of America foreclosure. It was all different within the banks. And sometimes within departments, and then sometimes within different cities. If you're calling Chase in Santa Fe versus Chase in Chicago, it might have been a different deal. Now everybody's supposed to be the same. Okay, at 90 days, they're going to get a letter saying, hey, we're initiating foreclosure. Okay, we're starting this default process, please call us. And then again, after 120 days, that is when they'll enlist the services of an attorney and start foreclosure here in Utah, right? So here's some of our borrower options. This again is on your handout. You can try and sell the house, just a regular sale. You can arrange a forbearance. You can try to do a loan modification. You can maybe refinance your loan. Okay, if your credit report's not hashed, or if somebody in the family or a private investor wants to do a refinance, you can totally do that. Another option that we don't spend a lot of time on is a deed in lieu of foreclosure. Sometimes the bank will take the property back without doing a foreclosure. Now, we don't see that very often with large institutional lenders. We don't see that with large national banks, but once in a while, we'll see that with the local bank or a local credit union. If it's a deed in lieu of foreclosure, you actually have a closing where the bank is the borrower, or the buyer, excuse me, and the seller, or the borrower is the seller, I guess, right? The owner is the seller. They close at a title company. There's a title policy issued. The bank wants to know the title is clear except for that one loan that they're taking back. So it does work once in a while. We've seen some of these with Zions Bank, with a couple of the other local banks. We've seen a couple from Mountain America Credit Union. They're pretty rare, but in the case where people aren't behind on their payment yet, and in cases where there's no other liens or loans against the property, the bank might just take it back from you. The funny thing is they don't reconvey your mortgage until they resell the house and recoup all their money. Okay, they won't release it because they want to reserve the option to foreclose later on if they need to remove a junior lien. So here's our forbearance. I put forbearance because I think that's funny. Come on, forbearance, right? These are the repayment plans. This is from the CFPB. It's a structured way to make up your missed mortgage payments. Okay, and not every lender has to offer a forbearance plan, but the majority of them do. Keep in mind, most of the time, the bank or who you're making your payments to, they don't want the property back. They just want their money. Taking the property back is kind of last resort because the second they initiate a foreclosure, they incur third-party costs. We'll talk about what those might be here in a little bit. Okay, the thing about a forbearance plan is a lot of people don't know what they're getting into from the bank because most of the time they're negotiating this on their own. The bank is just sending them stuff and saying, you need to sign this. Sometimes it's not even notarized. Sometimes it's like e-signed or docu-signed. So people will get a second mortgage that they have no idea about. A second mortgage starts to creep up on their property title. Okay, or a third mortgage sometimes on an FHA loan. They'll go to sell their house thinking, I've been making payments on my first and my second. We've got enough room in there. And then lo and behold, there's this forbearance third mortgage that appears on the property. It's one of those things. So one of the things you can do as a real estate agent is before you meet with somebody, check out the county abstract. Now, in some counties, those are free, and we'll look at what an abstract is in a little while. In others, there's a paywall to get to the abstract. So you could text somebody like Adam with a property address or a parcel number and say, hey, can you send me a copy of this property abstract? Adam will get it right to you, right? We'll take on that cost. And then, you can talk to your escrow officer, whoever, to help you interpret what that abstract really means. What are these liens that are recorded on title? So there's a few different modification loan types. You've got the FHA loan mod. Freddie and Fannie have their own program, and then the VA has their own program. Now, the VA is actually easier to work with if you're a veteran and you're behind on your payments. They kind of get it a little bit more. But if you have an actual VA foreclosure, it's actually harder on you if you let a home foreclose. It affects your credit. It could affect your credit longer, and your ability to get another VA loan is seriously impeded if you've had a VA foreclosure. So depending on who your servicer is, FHA, VA, Fannie, Freddie, and I don't have on here USDA, it can affect you in different ways, okay, about your ability to get a new loan. So here's we talked about deeds in lieu of foreclosure. Can I get a skip on this? Because I think it's on one of your handouts how the deed in lieu works. It's not the same, it's not very common, but pay attention to this stuff a little bit, okay, how that works if you need to give your property back to the bank. So let's talk about foreclosure in a couple of different ways. We're going to skip through this first part. This is a sheriff's sale. Okay, this is when the bank forecloses judicially. Now, it used to be that all foreclosures were judicial foreclosures. And in some states, they still have judicial foreclosure, right? If you go to Florida, everything forecloses through their circuit or district court. In Utah, we don't do that anymore. We have a different type. Judicial foreclosure still works, and it's the way the collateral works. Okay, the difference between a trustee's sale and a trustee's deed and a sheriff's sale for a mortgage is the type of collateral that's used to secure the loan. So when you look at it from a lender's perspective, I want to give somebody a loan and I want to have collateral, I want their property to be collateral. There really are two roads that you can take, okay? There's the mortgage document and then there's the trust deed. Okay, judicial foreclosure is with the mortgage document. It takes a long time. Okay, this is the way that your contractor can foreclose on your house. Okay, or the HOA used to be able to foreclose on your house. They go before a judge, they actually present evidence. They say, this person really does owe us money. Here's the original mortgage document that they signed, but it takes a long freaking time. So we don't see a lot of mortgages recorded in Utah anymore. We call them mortgages, but they're not really mortgages here. Here's an example of one with Beehive Bail Bonds. They're like one of the companies that uses mortgages still. On the mortgage document, there's only two parties to it. There's a debtor and a creditor, or a borrower and a lender. You can look at it like that. Okay, again, the mortgagor or the borrower is called the mortgagee. If you're like me and you don't have your readers on, sometimes that looks like manatee. It's actually mortgagee, right? When you pay your mortgage off, they don't do a reconveyance, they do a release of mortgage. So how many of you, your grandparents ever did a mortgage burning party? Does anybody remember that? It used to be the bank would return to you your original mortgage document that was their evidence of security, evidence that they could foreclose on your house. And when people paid off their home, they get this certified mail, or they pick it up from the bank and people would physically burn it. It's kind of a cool thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, it sounds awesome, right? Like I have to do shots like twice a week for autoimmune thing. And I figured out it's a lot more fun when I light the little alcohol wipe on fire. Now I look forward to it. It's just these little things. I don't know if that's related or not.
Colonel Potter and MASH.
Yeah.
Got his mortgage.
Burn it. Yeah, you burn it, man. That's it. Adam, I'm so glad you brought up MASH.
Yeah.
Underrated. So this is how the foreclosure process works. It takes a long time. Okay. Usually you're looking from a lender perspective. If you get through that first 120-day time period and you want to judicially foreclose, well, then you've got to start with the court. It takes you 6 months usually to get through the court process. Then you can have your sheriff's sale, your auction. But after a sheriff's sale in Utah, you have another 180-day redemption period. That means the person you foreclosed on for that 6-month period can bring back what was bid at the sale and redeem or take the property back. Think about that from a lender perspective. It took me 4 months to get to my first day of court. It took me 6 months then to get through the court process. Now we're on month 10. Even though the property sold through foreclosure, sold at the sheriff's sale, I've got another 6 months at least before I can sell the property to someone else because I have to wait for the redemption period. Boy, that's almost a year and a half. That's a long game. And that's assuming that the lender started foreclosure at the earliest point of the 120 days. Usually it's a 2-year process to get through a sheriff's sale. Can you see why banks don't like this option very much? It's not a great thing. If there is a sheriff's sale, the notice appears in the newspaper, right? And the sheriff actually conducts the sale, or deputy does, okay? So this one is signed by the Davis County Sheriff. It's from 2003. This foreclosure was for like $2,000 in bad checks to a grocery store. They foreclosed on a home for that. Isn't that kind of crazy? And yeah, look at the sheriff, Bud Cox. That's a great name for a sheriff. If your name is Bud Cox, you need to run for sheriff, I think, right? That's like Bronco Mendenhall needs to coach football and Bud Cox needs to be a sheriff. I did a closing for a guy. He passed away a few years ago. His name was Harrison Justice. Like missed opportunity, bro. Missed opportunity. You should have been in law enforcement. My name is Harrison Justice, and I'm the sheriff of this town. Of course you are. Of course you are. So here's our year-ish time frame from beginning the lawsuit to getting out of it at the sheriff's sale and after the redemption period. Long dang time. So we've got our judicial foreclosure basics as part of your handout. For those of you on the Zoom call and everybody else, you'll get a link to this. Let's talk about trustee sale now. So trustee sale is the new way, okay? And new meaning like 1900s, so it's not that new. It's kind of like me, born in the 1900s. I'm not young, right? It's gonna be fine. So let's look at this real quick. This is trustee sale, okay? And here's how it works. And we're just gonna follow this a little bit. We're gonna go trustee sale, okay? An attorney or title company in Utah. We're not gonna talk about the commercial, although the process is pretty much the same. We're just gonna look at residential stuff. So remember this CFPB timeline. They still have to follow this 120-day rule, right? They still can't start foreclosure until you're at least 120 days behind and you have, all those things that we talked about. And we're still looking at this from the borrower perspective. The beginning of the foreclosure process looks the exact same. What's different though is how foreclosure works, okay? So this is judicial foreclosure. Let's skip it. The timeline difference is huge. Now remember on judicial, it's about 6 months to get through court. You have your auction 6 months later. It's about a year. With a trustee sale, that timeline goes back to 120 days. So 4 months basically to do the entire trustee sale, and there's no redemption period. So after the trustee sale or that auction is done, the junior lien holder or the old homeowner doesn't have the opportunity to make you whole. They just lose everything. So you can kind of see from a banking perspective, oh, I can choose for this to take a whole year, or I can choose to take this for 4 months. They're going to choose the 4-month variety. Now, the reason that they can do that, oh, I put this, the Drake meme. Come on, that's topical, funny. Yeah, I'm not old at all. So we're going to look at trustee sale. And the reason that the trustee sale works is the collateral is different. So, and it begins with what the borrower signs at settlement. So let's look at a couple of those documents. The first thing the borrower signs is the CD, usually the settlement statement. Then you get right into their mortgage documents. So you've got a trustee note, excuse me. It says, I promise to pay back my lender at this amount. Okay, and then it also says, by the way, not only is this note secured against you individually, there's going to be a separate document, a trust deed or security deed that binds your property together. So the mortgage note is like a mortgage in that it's a two-party document, borrower and lender. The securing document is what's different. So this is one of the trust deeds from my house because I just wanted to violate my own privacy, not someone else's, right? You can see my wife and I were borrowers, right? And look, we hold title the most romantic way. We're husband and wife as joint tenants. That's pretty romantic if you ask me. When we sign this document, what do we promise the lender? All right, lender, I'm lawfully seized. I have the right to convey. The property's unencumbered, and I warn to defend the title. Basically, I'm guaranteeing you first lien position in my house. On a second mortgage, you're guaranteeing second lien position on the house. Okay, and by the way, I know this is a security instrument, and I know the performance of my covenants and agreements under the security instrument, and what else? The note. I have to abide by the covenants I made when I signed the note for this to be operative, and also this deed of trust. So let's look at it a little bit further. I think I have some stuff in brackets. If you notice, I've got some things highlighted on this one. This again is my last mortgage, right? Or one of my last mortgages. Okay, it says lenders Tucker's Mortgage Corporation. I changed the name to protect the innocent, right? The trustee is Backman Title. And then it's got two things. It has the beneficiary. It also has the lender. Okay, now the beneficiary is technically who owns my note. Now, for most notes now, MERS is the beneficiary. So a Wells Fargo mortgage, MERS is the beneficiary. For Bank of America, for Mountain America Credit Union, for whoever it could be, America First, MERS is going to be the beneficiary. Now, MERS is this kind of weird entity. It's called Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems. And it's a way they sell these mortgages as mortgage-backed securities. It used to be with the deed of trust on mortgage. If the bank sold the loan to someone else, they would go to the county and record an assignment. Saying, oh, I started with Adam's mortgage company. He sold it to Wells Fargo. Adam's going to go to the county and record an assignment from Adam's mortgage company to Wells Fargo. And then everybody knows who the servicer is now. We don't do that anymore in the industry. So have you guys heard of MERS before? All right, so I'm going to go back a little bit. You see on the very top of this deed of trust, it says MIN, and then it has a phone number for MERS. The MIN is the mortgage information number, right? And that's 18 to 21 digits. If I go to the MERS website and plug it in, it will tell me who the mortgage servicer is right now. And that can be really valuable if you're a real estate agent looking at things. Before you talk to a borrower, you can get a copy of the deed of trust, throw in the MIN number. You have to prove you're not a robot, but they'll say they're making their mortgage payments to Fairway Mortgage or Mr. Cooper, which is a weird name for a mortgage servicer, but it is there anyway, right? That's one little shortcut that we use. Okay. So again, if you look at this from a creditor perspective, you still have the option to foreclose judicially on the note, but now you can do this other thing. Now the borrower can be foreclosed on by a trustee. Okay, that's that third party on the deed of trust. Now, to be a trustee in Utah, you have to be special. You've got to be a member of the bar with a license here, like not the drinky bar, but the Utah bar, right? You can be a title company with an office and a license here in the state of Utah, or you can be a bank or credit union, an entity of the federal government, or somebody from the Farm Credit Association. I don't even know who that is, but these are valid trustees in Utah. So myself as an individual, I can't be a trustee in Utah. Chances are you can't either because none of us are attorneys. Backman Title can be a trustee because we're licensed and we have an office here. That whole we have an office here thing, you think it's, well, does that really matter? It does. So how many of you were doing real estate in 2007, 2008, 2009? Anybody? Okay, anybody do short sales back in the day? Okay, looking at foreclosures. Do you remember this entity called Recon Trust Company? They did a whole bunch of foreclosures just for these little tiny banks like Chase, Bank of America, Countrywide, just little players in the industry. They were doing foreclosure work in Utah, and the Attorney General at that time sent them a letter saying, hey, we noticed you're doing foreclosure work here. You're not a title company with an office here. You're not an attorney firm with an office here. You're not a bank or credit union. You don't have a federal or state charter. Therefore, all your foreclosures in our state are illegal. Cease and desist. So think about that for a second. How many properties foreclosed at that time with an invalid trustee? In Utah, there were hundreds. At that time, there was an agreement between Recon Trust Company, their partner banks, and with Utah anyway. And what they did is they put some money aside for borrowers who had been wrongfully foreclosed because you can't undo the foreclosures. If you ever sold a property through REO at that time, can you imagine having your first time home buyer move in and then 3 months later, the foreclosure is declared invalid and you're not the owner anymore? Can you imagine how that might work? There was a little bit of ugliness here in Utah until that got resolved. In other states, it was actually worse. In Florida for a long time, they didn't even allow, title companies wouldn't close on foreclosed deals because that whole valid trustee thing was such a concern. They had to come to an agreement with the parties. If you're a trustee in Utah, you only have two things that you can do under a trustee. That's reconvey or you have this power of sale. So oftentimes what will happen is you'll have the original trustee is the title company who closed it or the bank who did it the very first time. And when the new trustee is activated to do the foreclosure, the bank actually has to substitute somebody in. The beneficiary can change the trustee at any time. So you'll notice on this one, they appointed the law firm of Halliday, Watkins, and Mann to do the foreclosure on this one. Okay, so here's a list of foreclosures that are attorneys, that are commonly doing foreclosures in Utah. Now, any attorney with an office here and any title company can do a foreclosure, but there's attorneys that specialize in them. And it's kind of like being a dentist, right? Being a dentist, can you only fill cavities and make money? Well, probably. But what else do dentists get into? Teeth whitening. I probably need to do that again, right? Root canals, okay, orthodontics, periodontics, all these different things. Attorneys, when they graduate from law school, a lot of their goal is not to become a foreclosure attorney because there's not a lot of money there. Okay, the way to make money doing foreclosures, because it's a competitive business, is to do them in bulk. So we have these companies that will do them in bulk, okay? Woodall, Halliday, Bates, those are three of the big ones. Jax Petty is an attorney that some of you might know. Great guy, also does some foreclosure work, right? Some trustee sale work. So we've got through our first 120-day period. What is happening when after that first 120 days when the trustee gets activated? Because they're really not doing much until the borrower's at least 120 days behind, right? They're not active because there's not a foreclosure. So the trustee is going to start doing a few things. First thing the trustee does is order a title commitment. Isn't that weird? Now the trustee orders a title commitment, a title report, because they need to know who has lien interest on the property, who has an interest in this property. Okay, because part of being a trustee is giving legal notice to all junior lien holders. Okay, if you think about that from a real estate perspective, it makes sense. When you guys take a listing, what's one of the first things that you do? Well, you order a title report to figure out what's going on with the property. Same thing with the trustee. So we talked about in title lenders policies and owners policies. There's actually another policy that most people don't have any clue about, a trustee sale guarantee or foreclosure guarantee. So back in the day, within a year period, there were 1,100 foreclosure sales scheduled in Davis County. Okay, probably 6 trustees did about 85% of those sales. Okay, and largely it was that group that we looked at. So let's look and see what the trustee and the lender rights are. So this is actually in the documents the borrower signs. It says, okay, if you're behind, we can collect all of our expenses, including what? Attorney's fees and title insurance. It's right there in the deed. Okay, this is an example of what a trustee sale guarantee looks like. It says we're going to execute a written notice of default and cause it to be recorded in the county. That's where we get notices of default on abstracts on the county website. Okay, here's what the default looks like. It says, here's our default date. Here's the lien on which it's recorded against. Like this is the loan they're in default on. And it says, okay, from the time of this filing now, we have 120 days before the earliest date of foreclosure. We're accelerating the loan terms, calling the note due. Now, you can cancel the default by bringing the loan current, by selling, refinancing the property, or doing a workout agreement. Just because you're after that first 120 days doesn't mean you can't modify or do a workout or something like that on your loan. You still can. It's just harder to do during the second 120-day time period. The default actually tells the borrower and tells the public all monthly payments are due. Okay, we're accelerating the note and we've elected to sell the trustee or sell the property at auction, or the trustee has done that. So it's kind of the final countdown a little bit. Okay, that second 120-day time period. So what does that mean from our borrower perspective? Well, I'm at least 120 days behind on at least one payment. I have not been approved or evaluated for a mortgage plan. Or I've been evaluated and I don't qualify. I haven't abided by my agreement. That's what it means from a borrower perspective. Okay. So let's look at this again. So remember, the trustee is going to record the notice of default. Then the deed says you actually have to mail a copy, okay, to the borrower, to the current homeowner, and to anybody who has a junior lien interest. That's just it, certified mail. Okay, so these are all the folks that get the certified mail. We're going to go through this a little bit quicker. Okay, the trustee is going to gather the title commitment. They're going to look at the note. They actually get the lender's policy that was issued at the time the thing was done to make sure they're in first lien position. And they're just starting. If it's a construction loan, they have extra responsibilities. They've got to go to the state construction registry and file a notice of construction loan default. So all the contractors know it's in default as well. So that first 90 days, the trustee's active just looking at the property title and getting things ready to foreclose. That last 30 days is called acceleration. Okay, the last 30 days before the property can sell, it's actually harder to negotiate with the bank for anything but a payment in full. Can you still negotiate a short sale? Yes, it's possible, but it's a lot harder because there's these two tracks that are working out simultaneously. You have the borrower that might be negotiating with their bank. That's one track. You have the trustee who's a completely separate third party who's only looking at the foreclosure train and keeping that train going. So what happens sometimes is a borrower and a bank will make an agreement about paying the loan off or whatever, but the trustee continues with the foreclosure. If the trustee isn't involved in the negotiations, and they wouldn't know unless you told them as the borrower or as the real estate agent, they'll just foreclose out the bottom of any agreement that you have because that's their job. That's their job. So it's not too late for the workout agreement. Again, you still have these options as a borrower during that second 120-day time period, but it's getting tougher. So let's talk about one of these options. Now, have you guys been short sale agents before? You know how much fun that was? Oh, you're missing out, man. Short sales, woo! I never want to be in that marketing. Jeff's like, oh, they're great. I get somebody, I'm like, no, PTSD, it's not good, it's not good. Typically, when you're a real estate agent, there's less balls in the air when you're dealing with a regular seller. Isn't that a little bit easier with the listing? Sometimes, most of the time. It's you, the seller, and the seller's title company. That's pretty much it. Now, on the buyer's end of things, you got all these other parties who are interested, right? Not only you're the agent, there's the buyer. That's probably the biggest one. Their lender, does it matter if the lender's good or bad? Yeah, then the lender can't even control the appraiser, but does the appraiser have a lot to say about? Yeah. And then you've got the home inspector, right? There's a lot of things. Well, with a short sale, that complexity for you as the listing agent gets bigger. Okay, not only do you have your title company and your seller, you're dealing with the loan in default, and they've got departments going on. The trustee is independent from loss mitigation, which is independent sometimes from the investor. Now, the investor sometimes means the mortgage insurance company. Sometimes it's the entity holding the loan, like Freddie, Fannie, FHA, VA. You're looking at those rules as well. If it's more complicated than just one single loan on the title, it gets even worse. Like you're negotiating with the bankruptcy court, with judgment creditors, with a divorce attorney, with an HOA lien, with a junior lien. And your negotiations have to be complete with all of those parties. Can you see how this gets uglier and uglier? Okay, if you've got a second in default, guess what? Your whole thing about the first loan and those things, it doubles. Those parties double. Okay, if there's a first and a second and they've done a workout agreement because they were in default, suddenly you have three and everything just grows incrementally. It gets uglier and uglier. Now, with a few of these parties, like the bankruptcy court, you can't list a property if the people are in bankruptcy, right? Not unless the property's been removed from the automatic stay or you have permission to sell. So you can't even list the property or put it on the MLS. That's one of those things, like if you're going into a listing appointment, it's a great idea to get your title commitment as you take the listing. Because sometimes, do sellers ever forget to tell you things? Yeah, that can happen too. That can happen too, right? Get your listing done as quick, or get your listing title commitment done even before a buyer comes on, because we've had it where the seller forgot to tell the agent because they were embarrassed that they had filed bankruptcy. And they're like, oh, it's a Chapter 7. It doesn't affect our house. Well, yeah, it does. It does until the bankruptcy court releases it. And if you get caught as a real estate agent listing a property where the sellers have filed bankruptcy, the bankruptcy court will go after you and your license individually. It's a thing that happens.
That's what happened in this situation for me when we went to go buy our first house in Texas. And we went to go put an offer on and they accepted the offer, and then it was like that situation.
Yeah, they filed bankruptcy and suddenly you're like 120 days out, right? It can get messy. It can get messy. Has anybody ever had a situation where the people, you go list a house and the people don't tell you they're actually getting divorced? You find about their divorce from the title commitment? We've had that happen before too. Like, dude, you got to tell me. You got to tell me these things because it makes things more complicated. Okay, so the role of a realtor in this stuff on a short sale. Well, one, obviously, you need to know the property. You're really good at that. Understand how to evaluate it. Understand the seller's options. Because a short sale comes with strings, with long-term strings attached to the seller. Also, a foreclosure has some of those same long-term strings. And depending on the loan type, boy, a foreclosure on a VA for a veteran can be years, like 10 years of consequences for them. So just understanding those things is huge. Okay, getting the listing going and then negotiating with all these parties, it's really difficult because if you're the short sale listing agent, you are the negotiator for the seller. You become their chief, you're the face for them. Okay, they have to do a lot of paperwork, but you're doing the actual negotiation. So a short sale usually means declining property values. Now, I don't know how to predict the market. Certainly this market, I have no prediction, right? Who would have thought that interest rates would jump to 7%, and how much value have we really lost in homes?
-0.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Usually interest rates go up. Oh, home prices are going to, especially along the Wasatch Front, home prices are going to go down. We're not there. So we're not really in a short sale market yet. Usually that means the value of someone's mortgage is higher than the property value. Now, we might have a case where the value of the liens on a mortgage, especially if they've just bought in the last year or two, might be higher than the sales price. That might be a short sale market. But for the majority of people, they're still at a point where they can pay off their mortgages and their liens and make money, or at least break even on the property. Okay, this is the magic formula for short sale market though. Declining property values, high mortgage values. That means the home is upside down. I kind of like this slide. I don't know if AI generated it or not, but I kind of like it. It looks pretty good. If you're going to be a listing agent on a short sale, it has to be arm's length. That means you can't be related to any of the sellers, and it can't be your own deal. So you can't list your brother's house or your sister-in-law's house or your aunt's or it's got to be at least 3 degrees of separation, like that many degrees of Kevin Bacon. I think he was just here at Payson High last week, if I remember right, or was it this week? Now I just said bacon. I should have had lunch first. Anyway, it's fine. Okay. It's got to be arm length. Prior to taking your listing agreement, you're already doing the evaluation stuff. Again, I recommend you get an abstract. Okay, the other thing that you can do to figure out if this is a short sale or not is use a net sheet. So how many of you use net sheets already? Do you have your own? Title companies have them. Backman has an Excel version. I'll send it to you. It'll be on that website that you can download. It looks like this. It's not rocket science. It's Microsoft Excel, right? Where you can put in the sales price of the property. It figures out the commission and the title insurance. You can put in the month it's closing. It gives you the tax proration and things like that. If you're looking at it and you start to fill in first mortgage, second mortgage, other liens, HOA reinvestment fee, maybe it's in Daybreak or something, and you start to notice negatives, that's likely the candidate for short sale. That's shorthand. I believe in net sheets anyway. I think it's just a good idea when you take a listing, because what's the number one question a seller has? Well, they usually ask the wrong question. They usually say, how much can I sell my house for? And then in their head, there's some type of calculus going on. Well, that means I'm going to walk away with this amount. They forget about costs and fees of sale, right? I love the net sheet because it gives them a realistic expectation. You can tell them right when you're meeting with them the very first time, okay, if it sells for this amount, here's ballpark where you can be. And net sheets aren't as good as settlement statements, but I just believe, and certainly for short sale. Also from an investment perspective, if you're going to buy something at trustee sale, net sheet works for that as well. We'll talk about how in a little bit. Okay, so you're going to get a pre-foreclosure disclosure. It's an actual form from the UAR, and you get that signed by your seller if it's a short sale. It's basically, I don't want to call it a get out of jail free card, but it says, hey, I'm your listing agent. We're going to try and negotiate with the short sale with your banks and your creditors. There's no guarantee this is going to work. If it doesn't work, I'm not liable. Also, if there's sticky things that happen to your credit, I'm not liable for those either. And we'll look at a short sale approval letter here in a little bit to talk about how that works a little bit. Now remember, the trustee is doing all these things during this process. So once the notice of default is filed, they're continuing to work. They're still going on that train, even when you're negotiating with those creditors and lenders. Okay, bankruptcy is a special thing. We've talked about that already. Chapter 13 and Chapter 7 are different though. A Chapter 7 bankruptcy is usually called the liquidation. That means you want to get rid of all of your unsecured debt, credit cards, medical bills, whatever it might be. Some people who have to do a medical bankruptcy, they just don't have a choice. They can't pay their medical bills. They didn't mean to get sick or they have an accident or something like that. Normal people file bankruptcy all the time. It just happens. A Chapter 13 is different from a Chapter 7 because a Chapter 13 is a plan to pay back all of your creditors. Sometimes at reduced terms, and some creditors actually can have their liens or their rights taken away through the bankruptcy court. But through a short sale process, if your borrowers aren't a Chapter 13, your sellers, excuse me, aren't a Chapter 13, you can actually make the short sale part of the bankruptcy proceeding. If you present a plan to the bankruptcy trustee about, here's how I'm going to sell my house to make my creditors as whole as they can, the fun part is if the bankruptcy trustee approves your numbers, there's no negotiating with the bank. They have to take it. So what did I just say? If you're going to have a short sale filed by Chapter, I'm not saying that, but if you're going to file Chapter 13 bankruptcy anyway and sell your house, it might be more efficient to negotiate with the bankruptcy trustee than with all the creditors. Because the creditors will have their say in court, and you don't have to negotiate with them, you have to negotiate with the trustee. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah.
Tracy says, I've seen people file bankruptcy to avoid foreclosure and then go right back into NOD. Can they file bankruptcy over and over to their?
So it used to be that you could do that, right? So I'm going to teach you again how to stay in your house for longer using the bankruptcy court. The first thing is, during that first 120-day time period, wait till the very end and then say, oh, I want to do a forbearance or a loan modification. That's the first way. The second way is you go to that second 120-day time period, and the day of or the day before the trustee sale, you file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And then you've got to stay in your house and wait. And then at the very end of it, the trustee is going to say, you don't qualify for a Chapter 13. And you say, oh, we'll just convert this to a Chapter 7. And that new bankruptcy starts the time period again. We used to see people file Chapter 7 after Chapter 7 after Chapter 7 over and over again during the financial crisis, right? The bankruptcy laws have changed now. You can't do that. It's more of a one and done. You get one shot to file your bankruptcy. So again, what are people doing? They're finding these loopholes of, we'll file Chapter 13 and then a Chapter 7 to try and do the same thing. But no, that absolutely happens. And there'll be some people who go to a trustee sale and the owners of the property will file bankruptcy that morning. We've had it where people have won the bid, given their money over to the trustee conducting the sale, and then the trustee has to call them back and say, you know what, they filed bankruptcy just before the sale. Here's your money back. You don't get the property anymore. So we'll talk about that when it comes to trustees. So I hope that answered. Oh, good. All right, there we go. This is one of those things that it's going to appear on your listing and on all of your agreements, subject to third-party approval. And if it's a first and a second and a third mortgage and a bankruptcy and a federal tax lien and an HOA lien, it's subject to all their approval. All the creditors, all the junior lien holders have to agree to take less money than they're owed. And the way it usually works is the first mortgage is in the driver's seat. They usually will dictate the second mortgage can have this much and this creditor can have this much. And the other creditors get to decide. They get to decide if they're going to take it or not. And that can be a little bit annoying, to be honest with you. If you're dealing with the state of Utah and the first says, we'll give you $500 of this $5,000 in income tax that you own, is the state going to take that? Probably not. The state won't take it. They want all of their money. So again, ordering that title commitment as you take the listing, it's crucial so you know who the creditors are. Now, if it's money for a bad check or something like that, a judgment from REI or whatever because you didn't pay your credit card, they might take pennies on the dollar or lesser amount to remove a lien. But some of the creditors won't, like the IRS, for example. Yeah.
This is on short sale still, right?
Yeah, it's still on short sales.
Hopefully that first lender, if they can't work this all out, I mean, they have the ultimate authority to say.
To say nobody gets anything and we're just going to foreclose. Yep. And it can be harder also when on a short sale because if there's mortgage insurance involved, ultimately the mortgage insurance company, they have to approve how much of a loss the lender is going to take and how much they're going to pay that lender back. So what deals have mortgage insurance? FHA, VA, some Freddie Fannie loans do, right? If they don't have a down payment. The mortgage insurance company, you're actually dealing with the lender, and then in the background, they're whispering in the lender's ear, okay, give the second this much because we can take this much of a loss. It's happening, and it's harder to do a short sale when there's mortgage insurance involved, I think is the bottom line. I probably just should have said it that way. It would have saved us time. Okay. You can sometimes get seller paid closing costs through a short sale, an approved short sale. It's pretty rare. But again, it's up to the banks. And also transfer fees for HOA fees, taxes, and assessments. They've all got to be paid current, and sometimes the bank is not willing to pay for a reinvestment fee. That means the buyer has to pay for that 1% in daybreak or whatever it might be. Isn't that fun? As part of your listing, you're going to have a borrower's authorization signed. It's different from your pre-foreclosure disclosure form. It actually is something saying, I am the real estate agent. I have ability to negotiate these debts in behalf of these sellers. So this is the example that we have from Backman, but usually your brokerage and sometimes the UAR legal team will have a form that you can use to become that authority for them. They don't take your listing agreement. That's not authority to negotiate. The authority to negotiate is a separate document. Now remember on this, escrow officers like me, we can order a full payoff on stuff. What we can't do is negotiate anything less than the full payoff. Any negotiation has to be you guys. So I can ask a lender, how much are you owed and by what date and what's the per diem and how do you want to be paid? I can't say, hey, would you take $5,000 on the $10,000 that's owed? I can't do that in title and escrow. Technically, I don't represent the sellers. I'm a neutral party, right? There have been title companies fined for doing short sale negotiations for lenders. It's happened before. I don't want to be that guy. Okay, so you're going to get this complete stuff. Title companies are going to do everything. You guys are going to do the negotiating though. Okay, you're going to get your title commitment and you're going to see, all right, what are the liens we actually need to pay off? What's on this title commitment that we need to know? Is it just this $198,000 loan from 2013 that they probably only owe, I don't know, $100,000 on? Or is there something else? Okay, after you have your title commitment ordered, have your escrow officer actually do up a settlement statement at that point. Stop relying on your net sheet. Okay, your net sheet is not as good as a settlement statement. By the way, when you go to negotiate with the bank and the credit union and all the junior lien holders, they won't take a net sheet, they want a settlement statement, an estimate. So I think my record for doing a short sale settlement statement, I think we had 36 versions of it. Because every time anything changes, you're changing that, you're forwarding that to the short sale lenders and all the creditors. It's so great. We make so much money on those. Okay, your settlement statements have to have all of the fees. I made this mistake. My buddy Ted, short sale agent, doing all these short sales, on the estimated settlement statement, I put in $90 for the sewer bill. I'm like, $90 is more than enough, because at that point in Davis County, it was $45 a year. I'm thinking, we got 2 years. Well, it comes down to settlement. We're calling the sewer company, like, oh, these people, they haven't paid their sewer bill in like 5 years. The total bill was like $600. We already had an approved settlement statement. What did that $600 do? We could either renegotiate with the lender, which would have been another 3 weeks. The agent actually said, I've got $600, I'll pay their sewer bill. Now, whose fault was that? I didn't call the sewer company in time. I never would have thought that someone would have a $600 sewer bill delinquency. Here's what I found out though. You don't pay your water, they turn off the water. Same thing with gas. They can't turn off your sewer. That's a pretty crappy deal. Okay, I've been waiting all this time to say that one. Okay, all right, thank you very much. The dad jokes are free. Most important thing as an agent is getting a hold of the right people. That's where that little trick about MERS to figure out who the loan servicer is and the type of loan can come in handy. That's why you want to get that abstract to figure out who the junior lien holders originally are and to get that title commitment.
If I can add just a little bit, so I didn't hear you mention here, but maybe it's a nuance. I did a probate sale. This is actually my mom's house in California.
Yeah.
And I was the administrator of the estate. And she had 2 loans back in the day, Bank of America and Green something.
Green Point, Green Tree,
Yeah,
something.
She went 7 years without making a payment, so to top your.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Mods and bankruptcy. She went 7 years.
Wow.
And then they stacked it all on back. Well, what happened was, the second lender eventually went to collection that showed nowhere on the prelim. And my bankruptcy of the probate attorney didn't know about it, title couldn't find it. Whoops, nobody could find it. I kept calling everybody. And the reason why nobody could find it is because through bankruptcy law, they were legally not able to send my mom any more notices
About it?
Yes,
Oh,
so
that's
nobody knew
interesting.
about it. But we also couldn't sell it without them
Signing off.
stating, and they actually told me, your mom could have stayed here forever, or any of her family, we would have never asked for that. It was $120,000 second. We'd have never asked for it ever. But since you're now selling it, we do have to negotiate it. So as soon as I found out who it was, then we negotiated the 120 down to like 40. But even then, it was a very difficult thing to even find. So
Oh, yeah.
if you're ever doing probate, and just have to make sure that there could be something on there.
Something
It
lingering.
was on the prelim under green light, but it wasn't with green lights. It changed lenders.
It'll change.
3 times, but it was a very tricky deal.
It can be hard with these second mortgages because a lot of times if you're not making payments on these and the first files a default, the second mortgage lien holder will sell that as bad debt to a creditor, and the creditor just, will buy it for pennies on the dollar. And then figuring out, like you said, the servicing on those can be really hard. MERS is supposed to help with that little 18-digit numbers, if it has one, and sometimes seconds don't. It can be really hard. Also, banks sometimes change computer systems. So we did a deal where a lady had a home equity line of credit with US Bank, and she refinanced that home equity line of credit with US Bank again for a higher amount, and US Bank never released the first one. And so we're talking to the branch manager at US Bank saying, hey, we need to get evidence that this has been paid off. We need a reconveyance. And the bank is saying, well, we updated our computer systems around that time and we don't have access to the old computers anymore. We can do this, but it's going to cost you a research fee. Wait a minute. You're charging your client, your account holder, a research fee for a loan that she paid off that you didn't release with the county records. And sometimes you deal with stuff like that. We'll just call it stuff like that. Okay, so here's our timeline again. Remember, we're having that single point of contact designated on the federal level and also on the state level. That should help with our foreclosures, okay, negotiating, because the borrower is going to be, the seller, I should say, is going to be receiving mail saying, here's your contact. And as a real estate agent, you introduce yourself as a real estate agent, you send in that borrower's authorization, you're now talking to them as well. You're not calling somebody, calling the bank 7 times and getting 7 different people. That's not supposed to happen anymore. Oh boy, if you did short sales before, this is like the classic short sale story. You'd have this whole 130-page packet and they would have to receive it by fax. Yeah. Right? So you'd fax in the 130 pages, you'd have the confirmation that all 130 pages went through. You call them that day and say, hey, did you get my fax? And the person's on the phone says, sure did. I'm going to put it in the file so we have it. You call back the next day to someone new and they'd be like, we didn't get any fax. What are you talking about? You'd have to start over. So I don't know how many people still have fax machines. I mean, we have them at Backman just for this possibility, right? We'd have real estate agents use our fax machine because you can't do things on a little home office fax for 130 pages. It was just crazy. Crazy. All right, look at me talking about faxes. Current data from Backman Title. Okay, let's keep moving. Lender considerations for the short sale. They want to know the same things that you want to know as a real estate agent. What's the value of the property? How did you come up with that number? Versus what's the total losses? What's the total amount of liens and what's the difference between the two? It's actually harder to get a short sale approved than it is to go through a refinance. A refinance loan application, it's a pain, but it's harder actually to do a short sale approval. The information that you have to give them is actually a lot more thorough. They ask you things like, not only here are the liens and here's the things that affect your debt to value ratio on a credit report, but how much are you paying for cable TV? Have you looked at Dish Network? They're asking you these questions, you know what I mean? Have you thought about cutting the cord, fiber optic internet? I don't know. I found out my parents were on the old data plan with AT&T still, where they had up to however many megs of data and they got charged over that because I was at their house. I'm like, why is your cell phone bill for 2 of you $600 this month? They were still paying per text message because they just never got around to updating their plan. It's like the same thing that happens on this application. They're going to nitpick every little bill. I shouldn't talk bad about my parents, but look, this is the Mortgage Assistance Program application. Just downloaded this one online. It's multiple pages. Part of that program, part of every one of these programs, a forbearance, a workout, a loan modification, is also a hardship letter. They ask you to write them a physical letter saying, here's why I can't make my payments. And your application is approved whether or not you have an actual hardship that qualifies. Some of the hardships that qualify are job loss, death in the family. Property being upside down actually is a valid reason. Okay, market conditions can be that as well. Okay, we've seen short sales approved from people who never missed a payment. On the bank end of things, remember, they're looking at the total liens. They're going to use the title commitment to do that, right? That you send them. They're also looking at the value of the property, and they don't necessarily believe the listing agent. Can you believe it? They don't believe you. Realtors live by a code of ethics, and they don't believe you. They'll usually have a BPO done by an independent broker, and they'll usually charge the borrower to do the seller, to do the BPO. Okay. Here's your short sell addendum to the real estate purchase contract. It's important that's signed part of it. That's just part of your packet. It's available through the UAR. You pay your dues. You should use the proper forms, right? It's there. And the seller and the buyer need to understand what's in this short sale approval letter because there's specific language in there that affects both parties. Limitations, I should say. So you're going to check the borrower eligibility. You're going to have an appropriate offer submitted to the bank. They're going to know the costs and they're going to have the net loss available because it'll show on the settlement statement, and they're going to do their own BPO for property value. Basically, on the banking side, those are the 4 areas they're looking at when they approve a short sale. Okay, there's this little thing, I think this is from Freddie. This is a little checklist. Does this person qualify for a short sale? Did they check all these boxes? Yes. Have they filled out the proper form? Do they have a hardship letter? Do we have an estimated settlement statement? Do we have a viable offer? Are they working with a licensed real estate agent? That is one of those things that they have to do on a short sale. You can't short sell your own house. Okay, so again, we talked about arm's length transaction. Look at this little thing. This is from Freddie Mac, and it says, if we take a short payoff, here's how much we're going to lose. If we let the property foreclose on the right-hand side, and we let it go through REO, the bank takes it over, here's how much we're going to lose. Which one do we want to do? They're going to act in the best interest of the bank. So for a long time, like 2005, 2006, we'd have people who were losing their home, but the property values were continuing to rise. And the bank knew if this forecloses and goes through REO, we can probably sell that property after we take it over and actually make money. That's when you had all sorts of people showing up to trustee sales because they knew value of the mortgage was a lot less than the value of the property. Suddenly in 2010, that flips and the trustee sales were going for a lot higher than the value of the property. But they're doing that same calculus. Now look at this whole little section right here in the middle. It says mortgage insurance proceeds. They're evaluating how much money they're getting back from the mortgage insurance company if they accept a short sale versus an REO. Now remember, the purpose of mortgage insurance is to make the lender whole, excuse me, not hoe, that's something different, whole if the borrower stops making their payments. That's what mortgage insurance does. So do you guys remember who the first company who got a bailout from the government was? Nope. Anybody know? It was AIG. Do you know why it was AIG? Insurance. Do you know what type of insurance specifically? Mortgage insurance. AIG got the first government bailout. They had millions and millions of dollars in mortgage insurance policies. Think about that for if you're FHA. If suddenly you have to foreclose on all these properties and you take a loss in all of them, and the mortgage insurance company can't pay you for that loss, what happens to the financial viability of FHA, VA, and everybody else? They're gone. AIG was saved because it saved Freddie, Fannie, FHA, and VA. That's why they were the very first ones. So mortgage insurance companies, they still have that sting. They have a long memory. When you're negotiating these things, they have a lot to say about what they approve and what they do not approve, right? I filled this one out. I don't even remember what this is. Savings, estimated REO loss minus estimated short sale payoff loss. This is the calculus they're doing in their head. And again, we're still submitting offers to some of these lenders via the fax machine. Oh, I love that fax line. Like we had a lady who worked for us and she would send a 120-page fax and she would wait by the fax machine until the confirmation printed. Like, no, that'll happen automatically. She's like, no. So she'd be just waiting by the fax machine for like an hour. I'm like, whoa. Anyway, it's fine. Let's look at a short sale approval letter. So this is one that came from Wells Fargo. There's a list of things as a real estate agent and as a seller you need to understand when that letter comes through. Like, when does this short sale go through? What's the expiration date? How much am I expected to pay? Who gets paid how much at what time? How they want to be paid back? Now, the funny part is we've done short sales with some lenders and it says on their instructions, we want a cashier's check. They won't even accept a wire. It's a cashier's check. Can you believe that? So at Backman Title, what we would have to do is we'd actually have to cut a check, drive to the bank, and convert it to a cashier's check. Isn't that weird? Because if we send our title company check, they say, you know, we don't take this money. Your money's no good here. All right. Statutorily, if I cut a check from my escrow account and there's not money to cover it, that means I go to prison. But if that's not okay with you, it's fine. It's fine. Right? They're going to talk about things like, is this a complete debt forgiveness? Or are we going to seek a deficiency judgment? That's a thing. Are we going to give the seller a 1099 form? Meaning that we gave them a gift. Does that have to be on your taxes the next year? That's a big consequence to sellers. For a long time, banks would issue a 1099-S form, but the Bush administration, the Obama administration, after that, they would say, don't worry about it. The IRS has a rule that this is not really considered income. That was a rule, a recommendation. That rule has expired. So you need to know the tax implications if you're doing a short sale for the seller. Because if they get $40,000 reduction, suddenly they're going to have a $40,000 expense on their taxes from the 1099. That's a thing, right? Maybe that year you itemize your expenses and you buy the big, I don't know, what's the TikTok trend? Buy the big Mercedes that's heavy for work. I don't know. Don't take my tax advice, obviously. I don't know what I'm talking about. I do, know the TikTok though. So there you go. Look at this one. Email or fax the final HUD-1. You can tell this was done before the CFPB changed things to the settlement statement and the closing disclosure. Okay, send your wire to here, make it addressed here in this specific way, or we'll reject it. If the wire format doesn't match the instructions, they reject your wire. You have to send it back that same day or the next day, and that might be other costs. Immediately after closing, send us all this paperwork. That means like as you walk out of the closing room, that's not the next day. They want to have final approval. This is an FHA short sell. We're doing a $1,000 seller incentive. That's interesting, right? On FHA, they give sellers $1,000 to help them move out. Sometimes you have to negotiate that into the contract. Same thing with buyer paid closing costs. Sorry, seller paid closing costs, excuse me. So short sale approval letters will also have things like, here's the maximum commission for both agents. And the agents and their brokers have to submit that as well. They have to say, okay, we would love to get 8% here. They're going to give us 3. How do we do this with our brokers to submit that? Does a short sale lender ever try to take commissions away from a realtor? Yeah. Do you ever get a full 6%? It's tough. It can be pretty tough, right? They're going to tell you what's going to happen to the seller's credit report, how these things are going to report. Now, does having a short sale affect your credit for 8 years? Probably, right? It's going to say, okay, this is how much we require by this date. This is how much you have to contribute to the closing for your cash, if there is any of that. Usually you don't see that, but sometimes the bank will say, in order to do this, you guys have to bring in money too. Okay, so all these short sale approval letters have instructions just like this, and it's pages and pages and pages of instructions. Okay, they have to follow California law. Isn't that great? So the way the lenders work is they have to follow the hardest law of the land, and then everybody else follows that law of the land. So if you're a bank that does business in California and services loans in California, they just make it a default. Everybody follows what California does. So we follow California rules and regulations here in Utah. Thanks, California. Okay. Here's another short sale approval letter, just in a different example. It says the required minimum payment is this amount. The seller can't net anything. This one says all overages payable to lender. That's actually a good thing. We had a deal with Wells Fargo, and they had negotiated in buyer closing costs for $4,500. Okay, and the lender did a great job in getting the loan done on the borrower's side. So the seller closes, we're doing the seller side. We send the settlement statements over to the other title company. The title company finally gets the CD. She calls up, the other escrow officer says, hey, I'm like, hey, says, yeah, here's the thing. Our buyer only used $3,800 of seller paid closing costs. Now, usually that's a great thing for the seller, right? They get $700 more back in return. On a short sale, most of the time they're saying no overages, money has to match exactly. So on the buyer's side, the lender's thinking, oh man, I saved these guys so much money. I only did my loan. It would have been better for them to charge a $700 admin fee to do it, because we had to completely negotiate the short sale again because the bank was getting too much money. It took an extra 10 days, all because of that.
I was gonna introduce myself. I've got a luncheon that I've gotta be at.
Oh, Adam, for sure.
And that is card.
Adam, come up here so you're on camera next to the microphone for the Zoom folks.
So, I've been at Backman for 20 years, and I'm gonna assume to do this, and I don't wanna interrupt Tucker.
Oh, you're
but
great, Adam.
I got a luncheon at 12:30, and so I've just gotta wrap things up really quickly for you. The reason why I know this is gonna work is because I went in my golf bag, there's 8 business cards in there. There's 8 of you in this room.
Perfect.
So anyway, there's a few things that I do differently than everyone else in my industry. We work as a team at Backman, meaning that you'll have one escrow contact at Backman for all 6 of our locations. Every single one of those locations are intertransferable, meaning the escrow officer that you work with will be driving to that location where the closing takes place, even if it's here. It's easier that way. You're always working with one contact. If you, for some reason, you cannot get in touch with her or him, you call me and I'm Johnny on it. The team environment that we have is so cohesive at Backman. It is truly, truly second to none. And I'm not just saying that. I'm getting to the point where every single thing is transparent, including you'll know, when your deal is funded. I'll text you when I'm on my way with your check, or if they're wired. I'm not sure, if you guys wire or do checks, but at any rate, everything is seamless. I'm starting to do luncheons that a lot of my agents are getting to know their sellers or buyers well enough to where they're like, hey, Adam, you've done a great job. Why don't we, and then I'll facilitate a luncheon where we can go to lunch with your buyer or seller. And it just sets things in stone for you. It's been a win-win situation for me, because a lot of times agents are really close enough to their buyers or sellers where they're like, yeah, he's going to take us to lunch. But it works out well. And there's my cards. Every office is on the back of there. Call me anytime. I answer my phone first ring.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
Adam does a great job.
Thanks.
I mean, 20 years is a long time.
Yes.
Long time at Backman, does a great job. So let's get back into this. When the lender agrees to accept the overages, that's great because you don't have to worry so much about that extra $700. They'll just say, we'll take it. So you actually do want to see that. It tells you when closing has to be committed by. If it says you're delayed, it says renegotiate. Okay, let us know a week before. This is how quick in advance you need to know, or how soon in advance. They need to know when closing is happening a full week before. And if it changes after that date, they require another week's notice before you can delay your closing. Isn't that kind of fun? Okay, arm's length transaction. The borrower can't receive any funds that's not approved by the lender. You can't give a portion of your commission back to the seller. That's a bad thing. Don't do that in this transaction, right? You have to sign a loan servicer right to escrow proceeds. So if there's money in the escrow account to pay taxes and insurance, usually when you sell your house, you get a check a couple weeks later back for that amount. The lender takes that as part of the short sale. You don't get that money back. Technically, it's your money, but they take it, right? Again, you're faxing stuff. This is the most important paragraph in here. It says, if a duly noticed foreclosure sale has been scheduled, the short sale is contingent upon their ability to have the pending foreclosure sale stopped or postponed. So remember how we were dealing with a couple different tracks? We have the lender borrower track with the short sale, and then the trustees completely on a whole different track, speeding down the rail line. If no one notices the trustee or lets them know that there's an approved short sale, the trustee is going to continue foreclosure. And they'll just foreclose right out the underneath you, right? They'll take your knees out. We've had that happen before with folks where, wait, you can't foreclose, I have an approved short sale. It's too late. It's already done. So as a listing agent, you're contacting the foreclosure attorney, and their phone number, their email address, their fax number is always on the notes of default. So you get a copy of that with your title commitment, and you send them that borrower's authorization. We've had agents who've called called the trustee and said, hey, this is scheduled for foreclosure in 20 days. I have an approved short sale, stop the foreclosure. And the attorneys actually will. That's what they do. They stop the foreclosure. So it kind of works like this. I forgot that this was in here. That's kind of funny, right? That's only the gift that's a few years old. It's all good. They're going to get a 1099-C form. They're going to report it to credit bureaus. They're going to not report it as in full. This is what an arm's length transaction looks like. Let's look at this real quick. Generally, you're looking at a 3-day period for the borrower where they have to get the CD, right? We've got that CD timeline. With a short sale, it's actually worse. If people want to move in on that weekend of the 17th, well, generally you close on Friday or Saturday, you same day fund it, and then people can move in. With a short sale, it's not like that. Okay, with a short sale, if your borrowers want to move in here, you're probably having your closing about there. Because it takes a few days for them to get the short sale approved. If you've got a holiday, a federal holiday that they're not working, you account for a couple days more. So short sales schedule, they settle, excuse me, about a week, preferably 2 weeks before the borrower actually moves in. That's different, right? We're used to having borrowers sign, they get the keys that day or the next day. It's not like that on a short sale. And pay attention to these holidays. We still have agents that will put closing on the 24th of July. What's wrong with that in Utah? It's Pioneer Day, man. You can't do that. People are at parades. I don't, because I hate parades. Parades are the worst. Hey, let's go sit in the sun and watch all the dentists drive by. No, thank you. Okay. Deficiency. This is how the state code works. Technically, if you don't pay the lender back everything you owe them on your loan, they can commence a deficiency action against you. Now, for deficiency on short sales, the federal government has said to FHA, VA, and everybody else, you can't seek deficiency on a short sale because we bailed your butts out on the financial crisis. Wells Fargo, you can't go after your borrowers because we gave you billions of dollars. Okay, the next round, if we go through short sales again, that's a recommendation. That's not a law. So can you potentially, as a borrower, have a deficiency come after you 20 years, or I guess 7 years after you've done a short sale? You have to read your short sale approval letter to see if this is payment in full or not, or if they are going to seek a deficiency. Isn't that great? It's just still there in our Utah code. Now, we haven't seen that happen before, but it's still in there. Okay, so let's pretend we've gone through short sales a little bit. Let's pretend there's no deal. The short sale is not approved, or they didn't even try. Okay, we're right into this last 30 days of acceleration, meaning there's going to be a trustee sale. The very end of that second 120 days is now happening. This is what the trustee says at the time. Oops, I got to hit that one. The trustee is going to sell the property at public auction to the highest bidder at the time and place designated in the notice of sale. It actually says there will be an auction on this when we get to the very end of foreclosure, and those auctions start to show up in the newspaper. Have you noticed that before? I mean, this is one of the reasons newspapers are still kind of maintaining themselves, because legal notices have to be published there. Like, how many of you have a subscription to the Utah Commercial Register? Anybody? No one does. But a whole bunch of trustees and banks, they do advertising through there because it has a statewide circulation. So you're not going to do the Park Record up in Park City to notice a trustee's sale for St. George. It doesn't work like that. There's not a circulation. It's got to be like Deseret News, Salt Lake Tribune, or the Utah Commercial Register. There's another way to do this, though. There's a shortcut. There's a hack for it. About 3 weeks prior to the trustee's sale, if you go to this site, it's utahlegals.com, any legal notice published in any newspaper in the state of Utah will show up there. And you can actually search by certain things. If you just want to find legal notices about one zip code, you can search by that zip code, okay? Or one address, or one city, one town. You can search for things that way, utahlegals.com. It'll be hyperlinked on your handouts when that's sent over to you as well. The notice of trustee sale isn't recorded at the county at all. It is posted there, though. So recorded means you've paid the $40 fee, and the county's now taken that and put it on your abstract. Posting just means they've got a corkboard at the county where you're going to put it. So here's what Utah Legals looks like, by the way. Okay, here's the content of a legal notice when it comes to a trustee's sale. Okay, again, you can search for these. Here's what it appears like in the online version of the Deseret News. They have to post the physical property. Have you seen that before? Where the foreclosure notice is either put on one of those little stakes on the property, or it's on the front door? Yeah, that's a trustee requirement. And then this is posting at the recorder's office. Now, you would think that the notices would be posted like A, B, C, or I don't know. It's not that way. It's like completely random. And this is when the posting, I mean, it's a little bit crazy, but I can remember going to the salt and they were 6 or 8 deep with a push pin. And the only thing the trustee does is they send somebody like a clerk, they get the push pin and then they take a picture of it and they circle it to prove that they've posted that. They do the same thing when they post the property. That's how they prove the posting requirements. This is the new one, The old one looks like this. The foreclosure crisis ended and now it's down to one side. And actually now it's down to 1/4. The last time I looked at it, I didn't take a picture of it though. In Davis County, it looks like this. They have a clipboard that says do not remove. They even have a 2-hole punch for you there. That's where you post your notices of trustee sale. Isn't that great? In Weber County, it's so great. They just must care for their county residents more because they'll take your notice of trustee sale, they'll put it in one of those little Mylar sheet protector things, and then you don't have to touch the paper. Oh, it's so great, so great. Okay, I'm gonna speed through this a little bit. Let's talk about the opening bid. I keep saying that and I don't speed through anything. What time is it? Can anybody give me the time so I know where we're at? Okay, I'm gonna be done in 4 minutes. The opening bid is not set forth by what the value of the property is. It's the amount of money owed to the lender plus the cost of sale. That's the opening bid. Okay, the lender can put the bid at less than that, but that's it. Okay, at the time of the sale, whoever wins the bid gets a trustee's deed. So the bidders usually get involved about the last 30 days because that's when it starts to appear in the paper. They're also looking at the trustees' websites for lists of pending foreclosures. Okay, you identify loans in default from like Backman has them on our website. Still, you can go there and download them. Depending on the county, they're updated every week or every month if it's Davis County because that's when they send them. You can use MERS. When you're bidding at the trustee sale, you need to be aware of a few things. One of them is it's just you and the trustee. There's no third-party fees. You can usually have to put some money down or have some money available to be able to bid, and the trustee gets to choose what that amount is. If it's 15 grand or whatever, it's 15 grand, right? That's what it is. Sometimes it's 20 or 30 grand. The trustee, it's completely up to them. So you show them the cashier's check made out to cash. Don't make it out to the trustee in case you don't win the bid, right? And then they'll put you on the bidder's list and allow you to do the auction. There's some risks though. If you're going to buy things at a trustee's sale, the property might not be free and clear. There's some things that are sticky like IRS tax liens. It's also hard to get money. If you don't have money of your own, you can't get a mortgage in 24 hours usually unless it's a hard money mortgage to bid on things at the trustee's sale. Okay, maybe your uncle, your dad, or somebody has money. Maybe your aunt started a startup in Utah County with some sort of jungle juice that cures cancer. Maybe that's where you're getting your money. I'm not calling out any company in particular. It seems like there's a lot of them. But you have to make sure you're bidding on the right property. We had a guy who he went to view the property before the trustee's sale, investor, really smart guy. The property was on like 35th South and 35th West in West Valley. He got the directions mixed up and he thought he was bidding on a Rambler. He actually bid on a split entry. So he knocked on the Rambler's door after he recorded the trustee's deed. And the guy said, I don't know what you're talking about. My house isn't in foreclosure, but my neighbor's is right around the corner. He bought the wrong house. Also, we've had people buy the interest of a second mortgage at a trustee sale rather than the first. Multiple mortgages can foreclose at the same time. If you don't know what you're doing, call your escrow officer, your title company. You're still doing this little algebra in your head. What's the liabilities or what's the sales price of the property versus the value? Okay, what's actually in default on the abstract? The way I do this net sheet as an investor is I'll put my acquisition costs as the mortgage fees. I'll put my fix-up costs as other liens, and I'll put my transfer costs for selling the property out of that down here below. And then I'm going to look and see, okay, after I fix this thing up, what's the value going to be? I'm using actual math and not whatever's in my head. The thing that you don't want to do is like fall in love with a property and bid too much, and then the math doesn't work. A guy in my neighborhood ended up doing that. There was a property going to trustee sale. He and his wife fell in love with it. They planned on all these things they could do because, I don't know, maybe they'd watched House Hunters or something a little too often. They bought the property, did all the fixing up. Suddenly it was the nicest house in the neighborhood. What's the problem? It wouldn't comp. They had to hold on to that property, pay a mortgage on it. Basically a mortgage, they were paying back their 401k for 4 years until the value reached what they could sell it for. You have to be very careful not to do it. If you're the high bidder, here's some things to keep in mind. These are other potential costs. Just because someone has their home foreclosed on, does that mean they move out? You may have to do an eviction. If you've ever done eviction, how much fun is it? Yeah, all these different things, right? Here's your trustee's sale toolbox. We're going to go through here. These are all on here. So again, you're going to get a trustee's deed if you're the high bidder. This is what it says. It's a conveyance without warranty from the trustee. Basically a quitclaim deed saying, we foreclosed, here's our interest, good luck. We're washing our hands, right? So in REO properties, we're going to go through this very, very quickly. REO means the trustee's sale failed and no one bid. The bank took the property back. If you're going to do REO on the residential side, usually if it appears on the MLS, you're going to get a full realtor commission, which is great. Sometimes you can get a broker bonus if it's a Fannie or Freddie, they'll pay you extra money. I've seen as high as a $2,000 broker bonus for selling a Fannie Mae property back in the day. Probably not in this market though, sorry. Okay, their disadvantages is sometimes you don't get an owner's policy, especially when you're buying stuff from the FHA. If you want one, you have to include it on an addendum to the contract, a separate cost for the buyer. Buyer paid closing costs and an owner's policy. That's the way you have to do it. There is a couple things. This REO process runs through an asset manager. Usually that's a real estate broker here in town who's doing that. They don't get paid a full 3 or 6% commission. They're taking these things bulk and they're taking less money. They also become the de facto property manager, meaning they're doing the eviction. They're looking at any things that need to be mitigated. Like, I don't know, you remember the wet bandits on Home Alone when they turn the water on and then they leave? Do people ever do that when they lose their house? Do people burn down the house when they lose it? All those things can happen. My buddy bought a property, it was bank owned. He did his final inspection, his final walkthrough. Said, great, record it. We did the recording. He went and I helped him move that night because I'm a friend like that, or at least I used to be. I don't know if I'm that good a friend anymore. Anyway, we go to move him in. He's like, it's hot. I'm turning on the air conditioner. In between the time of the final inspection and the time that he was moving in, someone took a hacksaw to the air conditioning condenser and took it. So we just filed a home warranty claim. No, that didn't work. That didn't work either. But there's all these things that, and you probably all have nightmare stories. On an REO, it's the same kind of calendar thing. You want to have your settlement at least a week before the buyers want to move in because you're waiting for stuff to come back from other states for that original warranty deed, for example. These are things like, how does a short sale affect your credit? It does. This is on your handout. It's usually 7 years that your short sale will affect your credit. Okay. Remember that, I mean, this is the other meme I had. I didn't put this one on here, but there it is. And then I am done, man. I'm hiding this. I'm handing this over to you because I think that's you. Wow. Woohoo. All right. Wow. Show him the books over here.
No way he's getting through 233 slides.
That's amazing.
Auctioneer style, man.
Oh, this is the video. I didn't know. Yeah. Let me.
The guy from Black Jordan up there.
Hold on, I gotta share the audio.
Hey, you look good, man. On camera and in person.
Put a little color in the beard and made all the difference. Where is my audio button?
Everybody's probably hearing this microphone. Go back. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to hand this to you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
All right.
perfect. Probably, oh, do I need it for the people that are online?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some people on Zoom. You want to come on up here? Let me see if I can rewind here.
For you to get to know me, Jason Karp, a little better. I'm married with 4 children. Well, my dog thinks he's number 5. When working with a mortgage
I'm gonna have to play it just a little bit.
Okay.
Ooh, that's gonna sound horrible.
My bad, I didn't warn you there was a video.
I was just gonna say that.
It's still more exciting than the 2 hours you're sitting here listening to me.
Mine's still going. I'm not sure how to do this, actually.
It's a great
Your mic's
video.
on there. What is on the
Just
video? You wanna just kinda?
It's, well, yeah, I don't know if you can get it together.
People will say that it's important to know, like, and trust them. Well, the purpose of this video is for you to get to know me, Jason Karp, a little better. I'm married with 4 children. Well, my dog thinks he's number 5, but he is pretty cute. I'm an Army airborne veteran. I got my blood wings with this pin right here. Ouch. I'm a proud Utah Jazz fan. And I love going to concerts, yeah! I get my kicks running in races. Haha. And I enjoy being involved in community theater. I've been originating mortgage loans since the 1900s. Okay, 1998, but it was still a long time ago. During that time, I've worked many roles in my industry as a processor, a loan officer, marketer, underwriter, business owner, and now, officially according to my professional license, a lending manager. Because of my underwriting background, I'm able to catch potential issues with getting approved up front. Because the last thing you need is for someone to tell you everything looks fine in the beginning, only to find out that after an underwriter looks at the file, there's a potential deal killer in the paperwork. On a purchase transaction, that could cost you thousands of dollars in earnest money and the ability to buy your dream home. On a refinance, it could cost you your low locked-in interest rate and waste $600 on an appraisal you no longer need. Knowing the potential issues up front is more important than getting the lowest fees or using someone you know in the biz. Now that said, you'll also find that I offer very competitive interest rates and fees. One of my referral partners calls me IW, the home loan wizard. He even got me this hat. Now that you know more about me, hopefully you like me, and I'll work very hard to earn your trust during our mortgage transactions together. I do my best to explain all the complicated numbers and processes you'll see along the way using video and constant communication in the ways that you prefer: text, email, or phone call. We've also digitized the loan process for a simple and streamlined experience, from taking the mortgage application all the way through to e-signing the closing documents. So please reach out to me for your next mortgage loan quote at 801-836-5277. That's 836-Karp. I look forward to hearing from you.
Oh, wait, no, wait, there's a little blooper.
Oh, there was more.
Yeah, that's right. It's the little the Easter egg at the end if you stick around for it, but.
Hey, everybody. I'm excited to introduce everyone to Jason Karp. Michelle and I love Jason. He does a great job for us and is our preferred lender. So I'm grateful that you could make it today, and thank you for lunch. Appreciate it. We actually met Jason from a previous client that we helped purchase a home, really nice home, great buyers with a seller finance. They just had a lot of things going on financially, very complex. And so when they were going to refinance the home in their name, they were super frustrated, having issues with, lender getting everything done. And it was, Michelle, was it Greg?
It was Greg Hansen.
Greg Hansen recommended to them, you need to talk to the loan wizard.
Yes.
We hadn't heard of it, and what they get done in what? You got them done in like 10, 12 days or something crazy. It was like that. And our client said, you guys need to meet this guy. He was amazing. So we've been using Jason ever since, and I love him. So thanks so much. One other thing too, we've gotten appraisal waivers on nearly all of our transactions, which has been fantastic. And he's very quick. We're in the middle one right now, and be like a 20, 21 day close. And you're probably way ahead of schedule already. So.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks, Jason. I'll let you take over and tell a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. So, yeah, I'm the home loan wizard. It's kind of warm in here, so I hope you don't mind if I take that off, but I want you to take me seriously. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. A few other reasons, and thank you for that intro. That was really kind of you. I am a mortgage broker, and you've probably heard a lot about the differences between lenders and brokers, and brokers have historically had better rates. And but right now, the disparity between rates is vast. And I don't know why, but lenders have decided to keep their margins at a certain rate. And anyway, so the national average right now for offered rates is 7.4% today. And I'm still offering rates in the high sixes. And the reason that makes it such a big difference is because when someone goes to qualify, especially first-time home buyers, they're all pushing the maximum, of their budget. And the difference between my rate and that rate that lenders are offering can qualify someone for $20,000 more on their home. So it makes a big difference. You might just think, oh, they want a better deal, whatever. No, it can help them buy the house that they really want versus the house that they need to settle for. And the brokerage that I work for has the most aggressive margins of any broker that I'm aware of. So we just took the approach. We wanted to offer the best of both worlds, experience and the lowest rates. Also, lenders, you hear the pitch that, well, we've got in-house underwriting, and so, it's a lot smoother on that end. But as someone who has spent half of my career with lenders versus half in brokers, I can tell you underwriters are all the same. They all come up with the craziest conditions and because they're signing their name on the dotted line. So they want to be thorough. And what you really need is an originator that can push back on the crazy conditions that underwriters come up with. For example, that deal that you mentioned, they came in, their lender had pre-approved them, and then 3 weeks down the road, they said, oh, well, actually, we can't do it this way, and you need to come in with $70,000 more. And so Greg referred them, my title guy referred them to me, and I said, oh, yeah, I've done that before. We can do that, no problem. So I got it, submitted to the lender. Underwriter came back saying, oh, yeah, we can't do it that way. I said, well, yeah, we can. I've done it that way. We can do it. Okay, I'll take it up to the senior underwriter. Senior underwriter came back and said, I agree with the underwriter. Yeah, we can't do it that way. So I called Fannie Mae and I said, is there any problem doing it this way? No, of course not. All right, so then I went back to the senior underwriter, said, call Fannie Mae. They will tell you it's fine. They did, and it all worked out great. So what you need is someone who knows what they're doing. You need the home loan wizard to go to bat for you. That's right. Yeah, mortgage magic. Say again?
Do you have a wand?
I don't. Yeah. That might be like, yeah. It shall not pass. I have tons of programs available. Use of housing, which is kind of a rare thing for brokers to have access to. I have this great DPA program, down payment assistance, for anyone who might not know, that I just did a transaction where these buyers, they were on the fence, they wanted to save up money, and I said, well, I've got this down payment assistance program. It's a forgivable grant. It's not a second lien. They just give you 3.5% for your down payment. So it was an FHA first. They got the 3.5% grant. Sellers paid the closing costs. They got in with no money. They got their earnest money back. And the appraisal came in 5,000 higher. So they walked in day one with 23,000 in instant equity. And then the rate's a little higher. It was 7.75% on that program. But in 6 months, we'll refinance them to a lower rate. Hopefully, please rates come down. But they're loving it. And it just pulled a buyer off the fence that otherwise was just going to wait. And I have bridge loans. I've got inexpensive ones, but most bridge loans require that you get qualified for both payments on the departure residence and the new residence. I have a bridge loan. It's structured in a unique way that allows us to not have to count the payments on the departure residence so they can maximize their purchase on the new home. DSCR, I'm sorry.
I just
Did you
said
say
nice,
anything?
nice.
Okay,
nice.
thank you, thank you, thank you. And other unique non-QM programs. And finally, I specialize in loans with complicated tax returns. So you have investors with lots of properties, self-employed, people that get large asset distributions, capital gains, retirement, that kind of stuff, where the taxes get hairy. That's my specialty. I've helped my other loan officers with their complicated ones to figure out what's going to work for their clients. And I just want to thank Eric and Michelle for inviting me to be here today. He's been fantastic to work with, and really impressed with them. So thank you, appreciate it. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.
Oh, this is if you want to add my contact to your phone, just hold your camera up to that, and it should add my contact.
Do you license in other states as well?
Yeah, I thought I was gonna ask.
I think you have Washington and Oregon on right now.
Can you close another state?
I am not currently licensed in other states. I can pick it up easily enough, but I do have an outlet. My good buddy from Guaranteed Rate, he's licensed in a lot of states, and he's super sharp too. And he can.
That could be a hookup.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I like to be able to help you, and I'll make sure, and he goes in on his deals on all the referrals that I give him, because he knows that they expect the pricing that I give to people. So he's like, all right, I'll give them the friends, family deal, whatever. So yeah.
Good, thanks, Jason.
Any other questions I can field?
Anybody on Zoom have a question? I was just wondering if you had anything in the chat.
Hey, Jeff, one little thing on the Zoom call.
Yeah.
If they're Utah licensed, make sure that we get their license numbers there in the chat. You
Yeah, I
probably
was
already
gonna
did that.
ask you, how you want me to do it, do you want me to put it on the sheet or email it to you?
No, it'll be in the chat.
Yeah, if you just send me the chat, that'll work out great. I can submit that to the state.
So if you didn't hear that, just put your license number in the chat if you're in Utah for your CE credits.
Just waiting on one more person.
That's great.
Okay, cool. And a great recommendation from Eric and Michelle too. I love referrals and I love recommendations, and great introduction there too. So thank you guys for sticking with us on Zoom.
Wait just 1 second, someone needs to put their license number in. And then-
Okay, I'll just leave it on for a minute. Hopefully you guys can stick around. Jason's brought us a great lunch there. I appreciate that. There's
Yeah,
plenty
hopefully
for everybody.
it's from Spitz, Greek Mediterranean.
Nice,
Hopefully, I love
nice.
Spitz, so hopefully you enjoy it too.
Okay, I'm gonna leave Zoom on for you guys just to make sure you get your license number in there. So.
Okay, he got it.
Appreciate it.
Oh, hey, before I forget.
Oh.
Ian's gonna be our presenter next week. Oh, yeah. So, and as a reminder, we're moving to Thursdays next week. So our mastermind from Mondays and our Wednesday training is all gonna be on Thursdays, starting at 9:30. So look forward to that.
Yeah, for teaching. I don't know.
Okay, okay. Yeah, not on the next three, but yeah. Nice. Yeah, looks like everybody got in there.